Hello and welcome to week 7 of the lock-in. So here's week 7 of the 3-Minute Mentor Live Reboot Your Career. If you're coming to us via Facebook, we'd really like you to like this and share it. If you're coming to us via YouTube, it'd be really helpful if you could let people know this is where you've seen it and share the content. Enough said, let's get on with this week's episode. Welcome to 3-Minute Mentor Live and Reboot Your Career. This is episode 7. We talked about lots of things in the last few episodes, but one of the things that we keep coming back to is how to optimize our approach. So if you remember, we said the three critical skills were content, approach, and network. And I keep coming back to approach because reality is most people know how to acquire content. Most people are good at building their network. But the thing they miss is the approach, is getting other people to work with you and help you and support you, and giving people around you, and particularly people who might promote you, a sense that you know how to get stuff done. You know, one of the ways we get stuff done is in teams. And at this time of lockdown, many teams have been strained, many teams have found this very difficult to do, and many people have learned that the teams they were in aren't as effective as they could be. So I want to focus today on how to make sure that team is as effective as it could be. And actually the best way to do that is to look at the members that you're putting on that team. You know, teams aren't a random collection of people. They need to be organized systematically with the right set of skills and people to get work done. So the way I'm going to do this is to look at 10 different people. There's sort of 5 people I always try to get on my teams, and the 5 people I always try to avoid getting on my teams. And again, you can't always get the 5 people you want, and you can't always avoid some of the people you don't want. But hopefully these models, these types of people will be useful to you. Now, some people may cover both positives and negatives. Some people may cover multiple of which. But as you look at your teams, as you try and make sure what you're doing is effective, you should make sure that you can find these characters on your team. Okay, the first one I want to talk about is the gatekeeper. So the gatekeeper is a really interesting person to have on your team. You might think of this person as the chief operating officer of your team. It's the person that's making sure things are flowing. Meetings are booked, meetings are on time, people are on time getting work done. That actions we said would be completed by a certain time are completed by a certain time. This is the person you have that is organizing you. And particularly if you don't have this skill, this is an essential set of skills to have on your side if you're going to have an effective team. The second group of people is the foot soldiers. Now, you might have expected me to say what every team has to have is experts. And actually, we're going to talk about experts a bit later. More importantly than content experts are foot soldiers. Because you know what? The foot soldiers, the people that do the actual work, can go find the experts, can interview them, can research them, and then can bring that content back to the team. And any team that's just full of superstars and leaders is never going to be successful. So you need foot soldiers, you need people who are going to do the work. Now, even in the team leaders, the gatekeeper is another example. You need people who can do work. But look around your team and say, do I have the foot soldiers, the appropriate set of people who will do the frontline work to get the actions completed by the date they need to be? Okay, next one is the note taker. You know, I've been in all sorts of meetings where we've been talking for a few minutes or even as much as half an hour, and someone goes, is anybody taking notes? Anybody got the minutes? Essential to most successful teams is someone who can take notes, either on the whiteboard or can take them into their PC, does them accurately, and will distribute them fast. If no one else is doing that and you offer to do that, just remember to take effective notes requires you to be listening to what people say and correctly recording their thoughts, the actions, the to-dos, and the dates. It's really hard to participate in a debate where you're doing all of that. You know, I've seen a lot of people get up at the whiteboard saying, oh, I'll whiteboard this, I'll do it. And either they start writing the things they want, or they don't hear what people are saying, and they have to get them repeated multiple times. So make sure you've got a note taker, make sure you've got somebody who is there to help you capture the thoughts, the ideas, and the other things. Okay, the next is the simplifier or the communicator. When we get involved in teams, we get very deep and things become very complicated. And often they become so deep and so complicated, and we are so desperate to communicate all the good work we've done, we actually make following up to the person that we're presenting to, or the person who has to read our report, an impossible thing to do. So on every team, you need someone who can simplify and communicate. You know, when you do math, or maths as we call it in England, the teachers often want you to show the work you've done. They want to show you how they got to the answer. That may not be true here. Despite the amount of work you've done, the person receiving your report, the person getting your input, really may not want to see that you've done all your homework. So having someone who can simplify, who can communicate, who can take the complex ideas and turn them into easy, simple, useful models is pretty critical for a team, particularly a team doing a complicated thing, to be successful. Okay, the last one is the leader, and you might say, why didn't the leader go first? You know, I think the interesting thing about leaders are really great leaders aren't always that visible. They're not always the person standing up saying, I'm in charge, listen to me. They're the person that are assembling the team, providing the team with the resources, and helping the team achieve its objectives, which might mean getting out of the way for somebody else. I often tell my teams that as a good leader, there's only three things I can really do. I can try and make us think more broadly than we want to think. I can try and make us move faster than we might naturally want to move. And I can move obstacles out of the way. And it's really moving obstacles out of the way which is the best thing a leader can do for their team. Because the foot soldiers and everybody else will come up against barriers. And your ability to pick up the phone, write an email, deploy budget, or whatever it is to make them be more effective is the most effective thing you can do as a leader. So if you've got these 5 people on your team, you're probably in a really good start. And by the way, when it comes to the foot soldiers, there's probably multiple of those. If you've got this group together, then you're probably in a great place to start. But there are people who can really damage a team. There are people that if you put on your team will reduce the effectiveness. So I thought we should look at the 5 people I try and avoid putting on my team. You know, the first is the enthusiastic amateur. This always causes, in fact, all of these 5 often cause some debate with people. What is an enthusiastic amateur? Well, I often describe the enthusiastic amateur who is someone who always knows the wrong answer, but doesn't have the experience to know the right answer. And enthusiastic amateurs on teams can be very dangerous. They can really waste a lot of time with judgments or inputs that aren't accurate. I love the enthusiasm, but teams to move faster have to be professional. And I'm not saying enthusiastic isn't good. I'm just saying beware of the enthusiastic amateur. They'll know the wrong answer, but they may not know the right answer. And you've got to be aware of that. The next one I think you've got to be very careful of is the passive-aggressive person. So if you have somebody on your team who says, yes, I'll do that, or actually that's really not how passive-aggressive works. What normally works is they go, okay, John, Sally, Jim, will you do that? And begrudgingly they agree to do that. And you know that even though they've agreed, or you might not know, but typically you know that even though they've agreed, they're still not going to do it. And a week later, or whatever the right reporting period is, you say, well, did you get that done? The other ones go, well, I didn't really understand, didn't see the minutes. They'll think of 100 excuses for why they didn't do it, rather than having the guts in the meeting to say, I don't have the time to do that. I don't understand what you're asking for. And actually being transparent and showing some integrity that they're really not going to do the action. By the way, don't be a passive-aggressive person. If someone asks you to do something and you're not going to do it, the most important thing you can do is say, no, I'm not going to do it, and here's why. I have a whole separate blog. In fact, it's the most read, viewed, commented blog I've ever written about passive-aggressive behavior. And I will tell you that passive-aggressive people are typically the cancer on any team and any organization, and you should think about moving them on. The next group you've got to be careful of are the perfectionists. So, you know, if we're building a nuclear-powered power station, then I need some level of perfection, because clearly 99% isn't good. I need 100% or as close to it as I can. But most of us don't work on those sorts of projects. If you're working on a marketing project or a strategy project, then 80% and done is a lot more useful than 99% and not done. So beware of people who join your team who want to be and will behave as perfectionists and will not let something go until it's absolutely perfect. By the way, you should be aware, and if you remember the episode on how things occur to people, it has to occur to them as perfect. That doesn't make it perfect. It makes it something that occurs to them as perfect, which is a whole different conversation. So really be careful of the perfectionist. Sometimes you're going to have to cut and run. You're going to have to say it's good enough, and don't let, as other people say, the perfect be the enemy of the good. So be careful of the perfectionist. The next one to be careful of is the brilliant jerk. Now, if you remember, we talked in the first section about good people that you needed foot soldiers, not experts. The worst of the experts is the brilliant jerk, the person whose insights and ability to communicate those insights is just astonishingly good, but the way they do it is very damaging. So they'll come into the office, they'll come into the conference room, they'll come into the group meeting, they'll say, stop everything we're doing. I've had an insight, we're doing it all wrong. And they believe they're doing it all wrong, or we're doing it all wrong. They believe they've got a really breakthrough idea, but they can just distract the team from its core idea. Now, if someone comes in and says, I think we're doing it all wrong, you've really got to listen to them because clearly you don't want to do it wrong. But the brilliant jerk is someone who'll do this to you every day, every week, every month, and really disrupts the team, disrupts the ideas. Now, we may need brilliant jerks, but have them outside the team. Have them as someone you or somebody else can work with to make sure you capture those ideas and bring them into the team. Beware of that. The last of the people we've got to be aware of is the shirker. So this is slightly different than the passive-aggressive person. The passive-aggressive person says yes when they mean no. The shirker is just someone who won't do anything, who sits in meetings, doesn't take actions, avoids responsibility, and really is just there almost wasting hours on the clock. The shirker is not a helpful person. If one person's doing nothing and everybody else on the team is doing a lot, then the rest of the team will start to resent that. And so beware of that, and it is different than the passive-aggressive. So here are 5 people that it may be impossible for you not to have on your team, but you've really got to be careful about these people on your team. You've got to make sure that you're building your team together with the right people, the right set of skills, avoiding the wrong set of skills. And if you do that and you lead or you let somebody else lead, you will create an effective teams. And effective teams are really the most critical thing most of us can do to make our business work, achieve our objectives, and get the best possible approach and the most visible approach to those people who may be judging us and deciding if we should get a new job or be promoted. With that, I'd say thank you and see you next time.